Morning, everyone. Let's see if this works. All right. It's a good sign. So, this seems like a difficult topic for a lot of people, the covenants, the Old and New Covenant. And at first it seemed really confusing to me too, but the more I dug into it to learn about it, the simpler and simpler it got to me. It seems really obvious now to me. So I'd like to share what I found. It's like almost like grade school level. So hopefully you're not too bored, but I think it's an interesting topic, and I'd like to share it with you because it's kind of an important topic. The Old and New Covenants and the better promises that distinguish the two. All right. I got this little clip texted me a couple days ago, and it's really encouraging. It takes a lot to get up here and speak. I'm still, every time I do it, I get nervous. So nervous that I don't know how it's going to turn out, so I don't invite anyone. So it could be really bad, so I don't know until it's over. So when you get a little text message of encouragement, it is encouraging. So thanks, James. Boxes and BB guns. My promises to my brother didn't always work out. They pretty much never worked out. This one time we moved to a new house, and it was on a steep hill in the back of the house. And we had all these big moving boxes because we just moved there, and they were now empty. And kids, especially boys, and boxes. You don't even need a Christmas present inside, just need the box. Right? And these were big boxes, big enough, they were like yay big. Right? So I got one of the boxes and get another box of similar size and put it on top of that one, and you make a cube. Right? So I was like, hey, Shannon, my brother's name's Shannon. Shannon, let's get inside the box, put on the other box on top, and roll down the hill. That'll be fun. Right? And he's like, okay. He's 2 years younger than me, so he thought everything I came up with must be a good idea. And he didn't never learn his lesson. So he got in there with me, and we rolled down the hill. And, of course, when you're rolling down a steep hill, it must have been like 50 feet long. In the box, we were pounding each other with knees and elbows and fists and everything. He was pounding me, I was pounding him. Just kabam, bam, 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 all the way. And we got at the bottom, we pushed the lid off, and we just laid there on the grass. We were all beat up. And it was like, that was not a good idea. He says, you told me it was going to be a good idea. Sorry, it didn't work out. Then another time, we got these brand new BB guns. So we were outside shooting at trees and stumps and cans and whatever, and we got a little bored. So ran out of stuff to shoot at that was actually interesting. So I told, hey, Shannon, why don't you shoot yourself in the foot? And he's like, he was a little skeptical by this point. He says, well, why don't you shoot yourself in the foot first? And so I was like, okay, as long as you'll do it afterward. He says, okay, if you shoot yourself first and it doesn't hurt, I'll shoot myself. So I was like, okay. So wham. And so then he says, well, did it hurt? I was like, no. Nope, didn't hurt. And so he shot himself in the foot. Bam! And he started yelling, ah! I thought you said it wouldn't hurt. And then I started yelling, then you wouldn't have shot yourself in the foot. So then we both limped back into the house, and my mom's like, what happened? And we're like, nothing happened. We're fine. Because, of course, we told her years later what had actually happened, and it's like she couldn't believe where our parents were. But anyway, got away with a lot of stuff. Even my dad, his promises weren't always great. I had climbed this tree, and somehow I got stuck up there, and I couldn't get down. I don't know how I got up, but anyway, I couldn't get back down. So I was on the limb, and my dad says, well, just jump, I'll catch you. Right? And I was like, I don't know, it seems like a ways down there. He promised me, though, I'll catch you, no problem. Right? It's like, okay. I was like 5 or 6 years old. I guess he could catch me. He probably could catch me. So anyway, I jumped, and I went right through his hands, and he caught me with his knee. So I shaboom, and it really hurt. I was looking around. I thought you were going to catch me. He says, well, you slipped through. And so I was like, oh, I'm not going to believe you ever again. Right? So not such a great promise. But anyway, it's not the same with God. So, but let's start at the beginning. How did this all start? How did we get here where we are now? So back in Eden, there was a world of perfection. Everything was naturally good. Anybody here naturally good? It was great. Everything was, no one even thought of anything bad. And everything was perfect and beautiful and wonderful. Yet even in Eden, there were certain things that we needed to do, that we needed to have given to us to remind us of where we came from. There was a need for quality time in Eden between us and God, and between Adam and Eve, I'm sure. That's what marriage was for. But even in Eden, there was a need for this quality time called the Sabbath that God made, a special place and time. And God saw that the Sabbath was essential for man, even in paradise, like marriage. It's not good for man to be alone. It didn't say anything about women being alone, but man, definitely don't be alone. Right? Yeah, I see what happens. Yeah. He needed to lay aside his own interests and pursuits for one day of 7, that he might more fully contemplate the works of God and meditate upon his power and goodness. So even in Eden, we needed this quality time. So what happened? It was all good, and then it wasn't. What happened? It said, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some of it and ate it, and she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. But it was such a little thing. I mean, so I've even come across friends of mine, and they're just like, why did God make such a big deal? It was just a piece of fruit, right? So Adam fell under the smallest test that the Lord could devise to prove his obedience, and the floodgates of woe were opened upon our world, and his posterity became depraved. Christ was tempted by Satan in 100-fold more severe manner than was Adam, and under circumstances that in every way were more trying. So God was trying to make it easy on Adam and Eve, just to prove to the universe that they could be trusted, because by this time Satan had already fallen and there was a rebellion in heaven. And so God had to give access to what Satan was trying to share in order to have fair play, I guess you would say, for the great controversy that was developing between Christ and Satan. So he made this very simple test that was easy to resist. It caused no pain to resist it, right? No suffering. That we fell anyway. When our first parents transgressed the divine law, their natures became evil, instantly evil, and they were in harmony, not at variance with Satan. Adam immediately threw Eve under the bus, where before he said he would rather die with her than be separated. As soon as he ate that fruit, he says, this woman who you made, she's the one who caused me to have a problem. He threw her under the bus right away. He wasn't defending her. I mean, immediately his character changed, right? It didn't. So naturally evil. He was in harmony with Satan, not at enmity. And there exists naturally no enmity between sinful humanity and the originator of sin at that point. Both became evil through apostasy, completely depraved. It's hard to imagine that eating a piece of fruit could do that to you, but that's what happened. So the solution, what was the solution that God offered? There was this plan of salvation that had been in place for eternity past and that had not been revealed until this time. So now the plan was enacted, and this was the plan. Divine intervention. He said, I will put enmity between you and the woman and between your offspring and hers. God decided he would intervene and create conflict between humanity and Satan. He's the one who did it. Before that time, there was no conflict. God is the one who put conscience back into the heart of mankind. What divine law was actually broken, though? I mean, so it was just a piece of fruit. What divine law was actually broken? Well, divine law was the law of love. There was a break in relationship. That was the problem. That was just enacted by eating that fruit that God told them not to do. So you broke trust when you did that. On one occasion, an expert of law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" And he answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, right? So in the two commandments, love your neighbor as yourself and love to God. Those are the only real commandments that count. Everything else is, on top of that. So this is interesting. Do you know that the throne of God, according to the book of Ezekiel, is described as having an appearance of stone, of sapphire stone. And in Exodus, the pavement under God's feet on the Mount Sinai is described as sapphire, this translucent blue sapphire stone. And in Jewish traditions, such as the Talmud and the Mishnah, there are claims that the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments that God gave to Moses, he originally carved them out of his own throne of sapphire. So the 10 Commandments were originally sapphire that he gave to Moses before Moses shattered them, right? So it suggests that the 10 Commandments are equal with his own throne. They're an expression of his very nature, of who he is. So the 10 Commandments are nothing less than a written expression of the character of God, the foundation of his government, the foundation of his own throne. They are an expression of the royal law of selfless love. So what's the royal law? He who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. The commandments, do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not covet, or any other commandments are summed up in this one decree: love your neighbor as yourself. And that's the royal law. And ChatGPT made this for me. I just plugged it in and give me an image of the royal law. And so sometimes it comes up with some good stuff. Love your neighbor as yourself. James 2:8. That's the royal law. God is love. And whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. So what does this really mean? This is interesting. If you live in love, you automatically are living in God, and God's character is part of you. So this can be used as a proxy by God. You might not even know who God is, yet you can live in God without actually knowing what you're doing. Love for one's neighbor is viewed by God as a proxy for love for God himself. So that's why most of the emphasis is on love for your neighbor rather than the first 4 commandments, love for God, because those aren't inherently discerned. You have to learn about those. But love for your neighbor is automatically written on the heart of all of us from birth. You know intuitively that that's right. It's something that's written within you. Whereas love for God, you have to study about and learn about that. But God uses love for your neighbor as a proxy, as love for himself. Why does he do that? And this will happen even in the end of time during the judgment. It says, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you?" This is what the righteous will say when God will welcome them into the kingdom. And he says, you fed me when I was hungry, you clothed me when I was naked. And they're like, wait a minute, we never did. When did we do those things? We don't remember doing that for you. And the king will answer them, most certainly I tell you, because you did it for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did it for me. Nothing else will matter, right? This is the only question that will be asked at the end of time. What did you do for the least of these? That's the only question. And God uses that as a proxy for what you did for him. You recognize this more as a parent because Everything depends on what somebody does to your children. If somebody treats your children nicely, they're automatically part of the family. If they harm your child, that's the end of them, right? So even the heathen can be saved by this. Indeed, when Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. So they show that the law is written on their hearts. Some will hear the story of redemption for the first time in heaven. They never heard the story of Christ here in this world. It's only when they get to heaven the story is told to them. And sometimes they'll just walk up to Christ in heaven and say, "What's going on?" It says, and one will say to him, "What are these wounds in your hands?" And he will answer, "Those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends." And then he's going to sit down and tell them the story of what happened. And this will be done in heaven. And they'll have no idea beforehand. Among the heathen are those who worship God ignorantly, those to whom the light has never been brought by human instrumentality, that they will not perish. Though ignorant of the written law of God, they have heard his voice speaking to them in nature and have done the things that the law required. Their works are evidence that the Holy Spirit has touched their hearts, and they are recognized as children of God. So what could possibly go wrong? It's like a done deal. How could anybody be lost? Well, there's this human problem. I don't know if you have this problem. I have this problem a lot, and the problem is called I do it, right? I do it. I want to do it myself, right? And as a parent, sometimes you just let your child do it. Sometimes the parent just has to let the child learn the hard way before showing them a better way over and over again, sometimes for some of us. Like for me, I actually remember this. I was like 3 years old, and I was reaching my hand toward the stove because my mom told me never to touch the stove. So one day I was going to touch it, and I wasn't even looking where my finger was going. I was looking at my mom as I was reaching toward the stove, and she says, "Don't do it. Don't do it." But did she physically stop me? No. So I kept reaching toward the stove. She said, "Don't do it." And so then I finally touched the stove, which was on, and I burned my finger. My mom let me burn my finger, right? So then I start crying and everything, and she comforts me and all that. She'll be okay, and I told you not to do it. And after that point, I was like, I never did that. But she had to let me do it, right? And so sometimes God has to let us do it. So this is the difference between the new covenant and the old covenant. The new covenant is established on better promises. For if there had been nothing wrong with the first covenant, no place would have been sought for another one. But God found fault with the people. And what fault did he find with them? The law of love, the royal law, the law of liberty and light, the lamp to my path, the law of delight, the radiant law, wasn't the problem. Because it's the law of love. How can you change something that's based on love? Love isn't the problem, right? It's that you think you can do it. We are Abraham's descendants, they answered. We have never been slaves to anyone. How can you say that we will be set free? And Jesus replied, "Truly, truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin, and you can't set yourself free. You're a slave." Sin is the transgression of the law. But what law? If love fulfills the law, then sin is fundamentally a transgression against the royal law of love toward God and toward our neighbors. That's what sin is. You have not lived lovingly toward your neighbors. The laws of God show us that what true love looks like. That's what they're for, that to show us if you're acting lovingly or not. Because we're so bad, we're in such bad shape sometimes that we don't even know that we're not acting in a loving way. And God has to tell you, that's not loving. And you're like, really? No, that's not loving, right? If you love me, keep my commandments. And the commandments are to love your neighbor. That's the commandment. So what were the inferior promises of the old covenant? I do it. That was the inferior promise. I do it. I can do it. right? So Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before them all the words of the Lord that they commanded them to do, to love your neighbor. Then all the people answered together and said, all the Lord has spoken, we will do. And that was the problem. They didn't say, all the Lord has spoken is impossible. What are we going to do? That's not what they said. They were self-confident, and they said, all the Lord has spoken, we will do. The ministry of Jesus that he has received is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he has made mediators superior to the old one, since the new covenant is established on better promises. Thank you, Miranda. Right? It's not a better law, but it's a better promise, because God will do it. So what are the better promises of the new covenant? God does it. That's the better promise. It's not I do it, it's God does it for me. That's the better promise. Repeated over and over again in the Old Testament and the New Testament. It says, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel. This is the covenant I will establish, declares the Lord. I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. I will do it. I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. So this was God's original promise. Back in Genesis and Eden, it says, I will put enmity between you and the woman. And then David says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. You create a clean heart, O God. And then God says, I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit in you. I will remove your heart of stone, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And the Lord your God will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your descendants, so that you may love him with all your heart and with all your soul and live. And that's Moses talking to these same people who just told him, I do it. Right? Moses says, no, God will do it. Right? So the old covenant is human effort. It's illustrated by Hagar's natural son, by Paul in Galatians. And the new covenant is God's gift. Sarah's son is illustrated here, the son of promise, that wasn't the result of human effort, but of God's promise and God's power. So no one was ever saved by the old covenant promise of I do it. That never, ever worked for anyone, ever. Circumcision is a classic example. It was only given to Abraham as a daily reminder and his children to stop trying to do God's job for him. So it's a daily reminder because, every time nature calls, you're reminded, I don't do it, right? Abraham finally got the message the hard way, right? This isn't pleasant, right? But it's a daily reminder, you don't got this. Only God can do it. Righteousness by faith. Abraham believed God, finally, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And at that point, he became an example to the universe of what God could do for humanity. And the promise, this is a great promise. It says, he who began a good work. How many people feel like you are finished, you have arrived? Right? For me, I still think he's just beginning his good work. But it says he who began a good work, maybe he's just started with you, right? Maybe, certainly he just started with me. But it says that he will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. So leave it up to him. He's the one who's going to finish you and make you into something beautiful, not you. He will do it, right? For it is God who works in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure, both to will and to do. Of ourselves, we are not able to bring our purposes and desires and inclinations into harmony with the will of God. But if we are willing to be made willing, the Savior will accomplish this for us. So this is the very basis thing we can do. We just have to be willing to be willing. It says, be honest. Like my parents used to tell me, tell your brother you're sorry for punching him. And I was like, but I'm not. I would punch him again in a heartbeat, right? And they're like, tell him sorry anyway, right? And so for us, the first step is just being willing to be willing. Even if you think that you're not sorry, you think, well, maybe I should be, right? That's the first step. Maybe I should be sorry. God, help me to actually be sorry. Right? And then God will help you. Be willing to be willing. Just don't resist. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Again, you can't even do that, but ask God to make you willing to do that. God has always been seeking you with all of his heart. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. God has always had a plan for you, as long as you're willing to let him enact it in your life. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. You were the joy set before him. And remembering that for one sinner, Jesus would have laid down his life, you may estimate your value to him. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and dine with him and he with me. Just open the door. He'll do the rest.